Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I have Nathanael Zurbruegg. He's a founder of the Unlimited You. He's part of the Live Life to the Fullest, and we're going to talk about his history and what he's doing now. So, Nathanael, thank you for coming.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and welcome everybody that is listening.
Yeah, it sounds like you have an amazing story of hardship and overcoming. Tell me about your history.
Absolutely. So listen, I have been chronically ill for about 31 years old. Started when I was 1 year old. And I lost my own kidneys when I was about 1.5 years old. And then I had to go to start doing peritoneal dialysis treatment back home every night. And this really went not really good because of so many complications, infection and all that. However, we had the first light in the tunnel, all the hardship that I and my parents went through in the beginning of my life. We finally saw a light in the tunnel when we got a call for my first kidney transplant with 5 years old.
Why did you lose your kidneys when you were so young? What happened?
The problem was that I have a genetic chronic illness, and this affected the kidney. It's called hemolytic uremic syndrome, and this destroyed my own kidneys. And then with 5 years old, why they wanted to give me a better life, so they tried to give me a kidney transplant, if that makes sense.
Okay, and what happened then?
Then the kidney transplant got destroyed only after 24 hours, and I had to go back on dialysis. And that time, I couldn't do any more peritoneal dialysis because I had so many infection and complications that the only option was like doing hemodialysis, like going 3 times a week into the hospital and flushing and cleaning my blood. And so I had to do that up until when I was 7 years old. And then I had the second kidney transplant. And the reality was it was big success because the kidney was working really well. I was flourishing in my life like never before because now I could eat myself. I could go out. I was like disconnected from all the dialysis treatment 3 times a week. And I just enjoyed life to the fullest. However, after those 2.5 years, the kidney transplant again got destroyed by the chronic illness. That was a huge disappointment for me. I remember being in my parents' living room, not realizing what's really going on, not understanding why does it not work with me, why does that all happen with me. And I was like 2 weeks, I was on the couch thinking about how I can take my own life. I didn't eat anything, I almost didn't move around, and I didn't speak anything. And then, fortunately, my parents realized that they have to do something, and they worked in pastoral care that helped me to overcome that difficulty. Yeah, from that day on, I really I gained spiritual, emotional, and physical strength again. And I realized, okay, maybe this is just my life. I have to accept that. So I did that. I had to go back to dialysis 3 times a week again. And then I had another kidney transplant with 11 years old. And again, it worked well for 13 months. And then again, it got destroyed by my chronic illness.
Even though you were on immune suppressant drugs, your body still destroyed the kidneys?
Yes, it did. So they later found out that the chronic illness, the HUS, only activates when a kidney is in the body or if any other organ is in the body. The HUS is basically, a lot of people have that. It's basically immune system sickness, chronic illness, but it doesn't always activate. So people out there, they have the non-atypical HUS, which means it's in the body, but it doesn't do anything. And there are the atypical HUS, people like me who chronic illness always only activates when a kidney is in the body. And that's my issue. And so when I was 13 years old, I lost a kidney again. But I still realized that somehow life has to go on, because I still had the disappointment, of course, but I wasn't depressional anymore than I was when I had the second kidney transplant. I didn't want to take my own life again. I just accepted it and realized that, okay, I might not have the best health that I want, but I can make a choice to set my mind onto the right beliefs. And that was like I started to believe at that time, focusing my mindset on that anything and everything will work out for the better in the future.
At what age did your mindset change?
At some point, I wanted to be alive. So when I wanted to be alive, I had to accept that I have to go to live with that illness and to live with dialysis treatment 3 times a week. On the other side, I knew what it meant if I would have given up on everything from the previous kidney transplant that I lost with 8 years old. Because I had a shocking moment during the depressional season of when I lost my second kidney transplant. I somehow knew that when I end my life, then a lot of other people will suffering because I will be gone. And this really catch my mind. And that I didn't want to do that again when I was 11 years old. So the only option for me was actually to accept that I'm chronically ill, that there might not be a solution. That was like 20 years ago. Today it seemed a bit different. And so I just kept going and built on the belief and the mindset that whatever happening to me, it will work out for the good one day. And
were you told that you wouldn't live very long, or like what were your doctors saying this whole?
So at that time, the situation was like the doctors told me that I will never be able to transplant again in 2001 when I had my lost after losing my third kidney transplant. And for me, it was kind of a shock as well, because at the time I had a lot of dreams to go traveling. I was 11 years old, and of course I was, when it comes to dream, I was a normal kid, and I just wanted to travel to Australia. And the interesting thing was, like, at that time when I knew that I will never be able to transplant again, I realized that I might not travel the world as I want in the future. Until there was another teaching point that I want to share, that when I went home after the hospital stay, when they removed my kidney again, I went home, I was sitting in my living room, and I just thought, like, well, maybe the one thing I can do is to dream big and make pictures of my dreams, even though I might not be able to go to travel and fulfill my dream in the future, as the doctor said. And so the interesting thing, and that's what I still believe, is I come to a point that I started to create a big imagination. And how I did that, I was just taking out some Australian pictures from newspapers, from magazines, and put them on my bedroom walls. And that's basically the way I started to remove the medical side a little bit and focusing on the mindset part. And the interesting thing was, like, that 10 years later, all this happened. I went to Australia, even with dialysis and all that. And what I love about is that even though our body might be broken at some point, we might have medical issues or psychological issues, we still can use our mindset to increase our imagination. And that's what I so strongly believe about, to keep going in life, because that gives me a certain expectation of a better future, and as well a hope that things will turn out for the good.
How did you go to Australia? Did they have to do a special setup for you? What happened?
Yes, so I had to book the dialysis treatment. So at that time, when I went to in 2010, I went for traveling for 2 months. And whenever I have to do dialysis outside the current locational clinic, I have to book or call or email them or book the dialysis. And I just got in my mind, it was a really exciting but funny as well, crazy time, because I only could book the first 2 weeks of my traveling, and all the other 6 weeks I couldn't book for some reason. But I remember telling my doctor, she told me, hey, we are not gonna let you when you don't have booked all the dialysis. But then I say, look, I'm going anyway, because that's the dream I want to go for. And so I went, even though I had only 2 weeks of dialysis booked. And then over there, people were so helpful that I still remember that they helped me to book all the other dialysis on the route where we wanted to travel. And that's
amazing.
That's the thing I always have to do, to book ahead.
So have you done much public speaking about what you've been through, and how did you decide to not just not feel sorry for yourself, but to take the next steps? Like, what have you been doing to spread the word about your condition?
Great question. Yeah, so I returned from Australia, and then 2 years later, that was in 2012, I went back to Australia to accomplish a leadership college for 3 years, and I finished at end of 15. And after that, I realized, let me say that even in 2010, 2012, I realized that I want to use my story to inspire people that nothing is impossible. But I didn't know how to do that. So I thought, okay, let's go to a leadership college where I can learn about how to build a business, organization, etc. And so I finished the college in 2015, and then beginning 2016, I started to basically think about how can I start that. And so I slowly started, I just built up a website, put in my story, and people started to book me. And I had in 2016, 2017, and 18, I was basically on the road globally to speak in different countries to inspire people, including I was in the US, India, Germany, Italy, and Australia, where I started my first speaking. And I really loved it because I could realize that I can connect that with my other great passion, which is traveling. And so slowly, I got into that. It's now 4 years. I have added the mentorship program as well and all that stuff. But I started with a simple website, and step by step, I build it up and become the speaker that I am today.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from your speeches and from your travels?
Absolutely great ones. I have spoken in so many organizations already across the world, but one of the biggest speaking opportunity that I had, it wasn't really an opportunity, it was more a challenge. It was at a leadership conference in the US. Before about 3,500 people were in the room, and I saw people crying. I saw people really being transformed in that moment and taking another direction in life. And that was I love to see when it's almost like anywhere at any time that I see people getting transformed by knowing that, hey, if a guy can do it with a story like that, with so many limitations, who has no kidneys, who had over 4,500 life-saving treatments, dialysis so far, who should be dead 6 times by now, according to the doctor. If he can do something, then I can do it as well. And that's what I love, because we are full of unlimited potential, and often it's just the fear or whatever our circumstances or the environment that we're living in telling us we cannot do that.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
And that's what my passion is for, to really inspire people to go for their dreams, to not letting limitations define them, not letting the past define their future, but just going for it, and nothing is impossible.
What other changes of mindset have you had over the years? You've been living with this for your whole life. Now that it's been, you said you're 31 right now?
Yeah, 32 in 1 week.
32. So how do you feel about it now versus, 10 years ago versus 20 years ago? Like what do you feel like today?
Great question. If it comes to the health side, I'm pretty much stable. I'm improving my health. I would say it's improving. But on the other side, if you live for over 3 decades with a chronic illness, your mental health starts to struggle. And I realized that, especially psychologically, that sometimes I really have difficulties to get the strength somewhere in my mind. And so it's a part of life. However, I have to say that I'm back on the waiting list for another kidney transplant, because I decided to do that again because of a lot of development in the medical sphere has been done the last 2 decades. And they developed a medication that theoretically should avoid that the HS, my chronic illness, breaks out again when a kidney is in the body. And that's something that I'm looking for very well, because I realize that right now I have so many up and downs because of the dialysis. Living a stable life for me is very difficult, I would say, physically as well, mentally. And this takes a lot of strength. And I feel that sometimes I'm really, at the edge of not being able to fight anymore. But on the other side, I realized that there is something better in store in the future with the 4th kidney transplant. And I also have to clarify that they have a lot of success with the new medication. And so I'm very confident and optimistic that the time of being on dialysis, which is about 28 years now for me, it's slowly coming to an end, and things are going to drastically improve and to change. And that's what I'm looking for.
Do you think that people think you've been dealing with this for so long, so you're fine and you don't need any extra encouragement or help? Do they, is the immediacy of the problem faded from people's minds that you see? Do they just, again, do you think that they see you differently? Like, oh, you made it this far, you're fine?
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And it's not just with, outside people, but it's also with closer people, because, I'm someone who you wouldn't, friends that know me, they know that I'm strong and all that. For years, I never talked about how I'm really feeling. This is at some point was a good thing, because when I was a smaller child, I always said I was doing good, which I believe has a certain confidence of speaking the good things into life instead of saying, I'm bad. You choose the positive side of life. But maybe 5-6 years ago, I realized that I should talk about how I really feel. And the cool thing is, when I realized that I'm getting more and more psychologically unstable, I started to get psychological help. And so now is a time where I have people who are professional psychologically, where I really can say, hey, look, that's the way it is with me, and it's the way how I feel, and the way what it does when you are on dialysis. And some people, the professional, are really great because they understand. And I just had a talk the other day with someone, and she told me that she had no idea how deep it's going with being a chronically illness or having dialysis. And I'm sorry, I'm talking about deeply going psychologically. And
it's okay.
so it helps me to know that there are people out there that understand at some point.
Well, what are your goals right now? You wanted to travel. You did travel. This year is the year of, COVID. I would think that it would, I don't know if it worried you, or have you been able to do what you need to do this year, or has it been harder?
Yeah, great question. I'm not worried about COVID. I'm more like it's really hard for me. I haven't traveled for maybe 1.5 years. That's when I got on my waiting list for the kidney transplant, because the moment that happened, I have to stay in Switzerland, and so I have to be available for at any moment for a call in case they have a kidney. And so I have to be in the hospital in about 5-6 hours. So it didn't give me a lot of space to travel. And this is something, really probably one of the hardest time the last maybe 1.5 years, because as if you can't really live out your passion the way you want, then it pushes you even more on your mental and psychological state. And so back to your question, what are my goals is, I have a few short-term goals that I just want to break through that time. Not thinking a lot about what's going to happen next, but really focusing on having the kidney, which can be anytime. And then, of course, long-term, I want to keep building my speaking business, my mentoring business, which I mostly do online right now. And as well, one of my biggest vision is to building a non-profit organization and building 10 hospitals in slums around the globe. How do I do that? I don't know yet, but I have the picture in my living room. So probably taking 10 years to do something different in that. And that's my goals at the moment.
Oh, very cool. Have you met other people with your same condition?
Yes, I did. There are many people that are on dialysis connected with HOS. I do a couple, maybe a few people, but not really connected with. That's the standard at the moment.
So you have a goal to build hospitals, and you're in Switzerland, you said, right?
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Well, some would say you're in a very good place, depending on where they live right now. But
Yeah.
Are you able to travel throughout the EU, or you can't leave Switzerland right now?
Before Corona, I was able to travel, but right now it's a little bit quite expensive to travel because of when I visit another clinic outside Switzerland, I have to do about 3 Corona tests. And that's the thing what it is at the moment. And so I'm kind of, I'm just letting things cool down once they're getting better. And I hopefully that will be in about, at least in 6 months or so. Until then, I will be focusing on a couple other things from home. So
yeah, well, very good. Nathan, what advice do you have for people that have very difficult medical conditions and they feel like they have no hope? What can you tell them?
Great question. I feel like telling that, firstly, I know it's easy said than done. Just never give up and be open to create a mindset that looks beyond your circumstances. It's absolutely no shame or whatever to dream big when you are in a difficult circumstance. I don't know whether you are learning by listening or by seeing or by writing. I would recommend you to and encourage you to to write down any dreams you have and look beyond the circumstance that you have right now. Remove your challenges, circumstances for a moment and write down everything, or make picture or whatever. Get some picture on Google of the dreams that you want. Print them out, put them on a wall that you look at a lot of times. I mean, you can't lose anything if you do that. And what I realized what it does is it builds up a certain excitement to keep going and a certain hope. As well, it gives you strength to keep going, because now you look at something, or you listen to something, or you look at your writing again, you know, okay, that might be possible one day. And this is something that I really want to encourage you with. Just do it. You can't lose anything by doing that. Just try it out, whatever works best for you, and see what will happen in maybe, who knows, next few months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years.
Well, very good. Nathan, what is the best way for people to find out more about you and to follow your work?
Great, yes, of course. So there's a personal website that you can get more of my story if you want, which is nathanaelzurbruegg.com, or my business website where you can look at all the services that I'm helping people with, which is unlimitedyou.co.
For people listening, your last name is spelled Zurbruegg. So it's pronounced differently than at least people in America would see it. So Nathanael Zurbruegg. So thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.